We have entered the time of year when all of my favorite flavors come into play. Fall is the time for coziness and warmth, and those feelings extend to the food we eat, especially during the holiday season. Pumpkin flavor, sweet potatoes, cinnamon, all of these things are just begging for a place at your table and in your tummy. And that is exactly where my Libby's pumpkin bread with a butterscotch glaze comes in. It is a moist, flavorful, and perfectly spiced treat to make for the upcoming holidays. And since we're using pumpkins, Halloween falls in there too. If you love banana bread, this pumpkin bread recipe is going to be right up your alley. They're very similar. They're similar in shape, flavor profile, and soft texture. But this bread is a little more elevated with that decadent butterscotch glaze that's going to complement all of those warm spices really well. So the first thing that I did is I got my mixing bowl and I combined my brown sugar, melted butter, my pumpkin puree, Libby's of course, my vanilla extract, my pumpkin pie spice, and my eggs. That's what I'm putting into that bowl. I'm calling it my wet ingredients, even though there is a dry ingredient in there, brown sugar, and I guess technically the pumpkin. However, pumpkin is a little wet because it's pumpkin puree. Anyway, I'm going to mix all of that together before I start adding my dry ingredients, which today is going to be a vanilla pudding mix, some baking soda, baking powder, all-purpose flour, and some salt. And when we add all of those dry ingredients to our wet ingredients, we're going to make sure that we do not over mix it. Oh yeah, one more thing. When you add that melted butter to your wet ingredients, just make sure, check the temperature. You don't want to add super hot butter to your eggs or you're going to have scrambled eggs. So you can either temper it or you can just melt your butter and let it sit out for a minute until it comes back to room temperature. This pumpkin bread is also so versatile that it could be a dessert, it could be a snack, or even breakfast. I like to make sweetbreads like this for breakfast because it goes so well with a nice, rich cup of coffee. I'm an espresso drinker. I like my coffee really strong, so the sweetness of banana bread or pumpkin bread is just a great addition. But I also think that with a quick pop into the microwave to warm it up, a slice of this pumpkin bread with that butterscotch glaze could easily pass as a decadent dessert after dinner. No problems there. Now, I'm sure you noticed and you're probably wondering why in the world we added vanilla pudding mix into this pumpkin bread recipe. It's certainly an unexpected ingredient, but it is responsible, I believe, for the moist texture of the pumpkin bread. It's the perfect way to ensure that the bread doesn't get dry during the baking process. And honestly, it gives the pumpkin bread almost like a fudgy texture. The pure pumpkin puree in the bread also helps to make it very tender, but I'm telling you that the vanilla pudding mix just does something super special. Can we take a moment to appreciate this loaf pan? Look how gorgeous. One of my best friends, well, who am I kidding? My best friend said, "Hey, I have this beautiful loaf pan. I want you to use it for your bread." Shout out to Bombshell. Thank you, Leslie. I love you. It is gorgeous. And I'm just so excited for how this pumpkin bread is going to look in a super decorative loaf pan. So once everything's combined, and of course I greased that loaf pan, I'm going to put it in a 350-degree oven and let it bake for about 50 minutes. And then when it's completely done, I'm going to pull it out and let it sit for at least an hour. But now I'm going to work on the butterscotch glaze. This is a moment where you can do exactly as I'm doing, or you can read the directions in my recipe and do it correctly. I wasn't even thinking. You should start with a stick of butter in your saucepan and melt it. But I went in with my milk first. So that's milk, butterscotch chips, and butter in there. And then I added some pumpkin pie spice flavoring. You don't have to, but I wanted a little bit in my glaze to just kind of tie it in with the bread. Then we added our powdered sugar. Doesn't matter if you do it in this order or if you do it in the order of my written recipe on the blog, probably not, but I just wanted you to know. So you might also want to use a slightly bigger saucepan because it kept trying to boil over on me, but you're going to cook it till it gets thick as you want it. I kept mine kind of thin today just because I was running low on time. But if you want to get it to a really thick consistency, which I do think you should, then you can cook it until it begins to coat the back of the spoon. Then you can remove it from the heat and let it sit. It will thicken as it sits. I would let it sit for at least an hour before I glazed my pumpkin bread. So all the bread's done. It's been sitting for an hour. My glaze has been sitting. Just going to use a knife. I think I'm using a butter knife here to loosen up the sides to make sure that it comes out in one piece and it's not destroyed, because I want to see all those pretty pumpkins on top. And it worked, and I am so excited. And then all you have to do is spoon your glaze over your delicious, perfectly moist, cooked pumpkin bread, y'all. It is so good. Or you can not glaze the whole loaf. You can just cut slices and pour your glaze over each individual slice as you serve it. It's totally up to you, but you have to make this one, guys. You have to.